Okay, let's see. Ooh, full screen. There I am. Hello, Contreras family.
Hi.
Oh, how are you? Let's see. Full screen, full screen.
Yeah.
Whoops, there I am. Okay. Oh, wow.
Hi.
Oh, hello, hello. We
I
got,
think I wanna. Hi. Screens.
oh,
I want the back one. Oh, hi,
hello, hello. How's everybody?
okay.
Good. How about you, Miss Kathy?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. Let's see gallery views, what we want. So I can see you all. Oh my goodness. While I was sitting here waiting, I thought, I think I'm going to read my book of poetry. Remember I told you I found this book and it
Hi,
has some
sisters.
old poems on it. Ah, I've been reading them and having so much fun.
Sorry.
Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello to your
Reading a
cousin.
donut hole.
A donut hole. Lucky, lucky.
I made it.
You didn't. You made a donut hole? Wow. How did you know how to do that?
What?
Because I didn't have any donut pan. So we used a little mini cupcake pan instead, so they turned out like little holes.
I love it. Perfect.
We can take a picture of it and send it.
Yes. You know, that's
Eat the whole thing.
I was in my craft room just crafting away, and my husband came in there and said, "You know what time it is, don't you?" No, he said, "You're going to be reading in 45 minutes." Ah, I forgot. So I had to grab my books and make copies and get ready to read to you. But I didn't want to miss it. Woo! Okay, so I'm going to start while we're waiting for the rest of our clan, and maybe this is it, by reading you a poem from this 101 famous poems. So you know that these poems were written, let's see, they had to be written before, these had to be written before I was born. So these are old famous poems. This one's called The Flag Goes By. What do you think it's going to be about? A flag, right? You're pretty smart. Okay. Hats off. Along the streets there comes a blare of bugles, a ruffle of drums, a flash of color beneath the sky. Hats off. The flag is passing by. Blue and crimson and white it shines over the steeple-tipped ordered lines. Hats off! The colors before us fly, but more than the flag is passing by. Sea fights and land fights, grim and great, fought to make and save the state. Weary marches and sinking ships, cheers of victory on dying lips. Days of plenty and years of peace, march of a strong land's swift increase. Equal justice, right and law, stately honor and revered awe, sign of a nation, great and strong, toward her people from foreign wrong. Pride and glory and honor all live in the colors to stand or fall. Hats off! Along the street there comes a blare of bugles, a ruffle of drums, and loyal hearts are beating high. Hats off! The flag is passing by. Oh, look at you pulling ours. So you guys know what you're supposed to do when a flag is walking down the street? You know what you're supposed to do? What do you think?
What do you think?
Take your hat off and stand up when you see a flag passing by. That shows respect to the people who fought in the wars, and it shows respect to our country and to the flags. Okay, we are going to read 3 books tonight, and my first book is called A Porcupine Named Fluffy. So I'm going to share my screen
Regular
so
background.
you can see some pictures. And there we go. And that's not, oh, here it is. Okay. Chrysanthemum. No, that's not the right story. Let me see here. Let's scoot this down. Porcupine. There we go. A porcupine. We got it now. A porcupine named Fluffy. There he is. All righty. When Mr. and Mrs. Porcupine had their first child, they were delighted. Now he needed a name. Should they call him Spike? Nah, Spike was too common. Should they call him Lance? No, Lance sounded too fierce. Should they call him Needle Rooser? No, Needle Rooser was too long. Prickles? Pokey? Quillian? Then together they had an idea. Let's call him Fluffy. It's such a pretty name, Fluffy. But soon there came a time when Fluffy began to doubt that he was Fluffy. He first became suspicious when he backed into a door and stuck fast. That was not a Fluffy thing to do. He was even more convinced when he accidentally slept on his back and poked holes in his mattress. A very unfluffy thing to do. And when he tried to carry an umbrella, he knew the truth without a doubt. Fluffy definitely wasn't. So he decided to become fluffier. Clouds are fluffy, he thought. I'll be a cloud. But he couldn't stay up. I know. Pillows are fluffy, he said. I'll be a pillow. But when his mother sat on him, she was not pleased. He tried soaking in a bubble bath for 45 minutes, but he did not become fluffy. He became soggy. He tried whipped cream. He put a little on each quill. It was not easy, and it took more than half a day. But this did not make Fluffy fluffy. They should have named me Gooey, he sighed. He ate a lot of fluffy marshmallows. He rolled in shaving cream and feathers. He even tried to become a bunny. But the truth remained, Fluffy wasn't. Well, one afternoon, Fluffy set out for a walk, trying to think of ways to become fluffy. Before long, he met a very large rhinoceros. "Grrr," said the rhinoceros. "I'm going to give you a rough time." Fluffy didn't know what a rough time was, but he didn't like the sound of it. "What's your name, small prickly thing?" asked the rhinoceros unkindly. "Fluffy," said Fluffy. The rhinoceros smiled. He giggled. Then he laughed out loud. He rolled on the ground. Oh, he jiggled and he slapped his knees. He roared with laughter. A porcupine named Fluffy, howled the rhinoceros. Fluffy was embarrassed, but he tried to be polite. "And what's your name?" he asked. "I can't say," giggled the rhinoceros. "Hubert," suggested Fluffy. Oh, help. I just can't say it. I'm laughing so hard. "Harold? Or maybe Herman?" asked Fluffy. "No, no," gasped the rhinoceros. It's, 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 it's Hippo." "Hippo? A rhinoceros named Hippo." Fluffy smiled. He giggled. Then he laughed out loud. He jiggled and he slapped his knees. And he howled with laughter. "A rhinoceros named Hippo," Fluffy cried. "A porcupine named Fluffy." "A rhinoceros named Hippo." It was almost more than they could bear. Hippo and Fluffy rolled on the ground, giggling and laughing until tears came to their eyes. At last, they lay exhausted. And from that time on, they were the best of friends. And Fluffy didn't mind being Fluffy anymore, even though he wasn't. That's the end of that one. Okay, do you like that one? What did you think?
Yeah, that was very fun.
That was kind of fun, wasn't it? What did you think about Fluffy? Poor guy's name.
I think I hear for everyone.
Yeah, well, now I think we're going to read another book about somebody's name. And her
Yay.
name, it's a long one. It's called Chrysanthemum. I love Chrysanthemum. Here we go. Chrysanthemum by Kevin Hanks. All right, Chrysanthemum. Are you ready? I don't know if you guys know how much work it is to choose names for your kids when they're born, but Fluffy's parents had a hard time. And I remember when my first daughter was born, it took us the whole time I was pregnant to decide what to name our first daughter. And then when we had the name, we didn't even agree on how to spell it. So names are hard. And here we are, Chrysanthemum. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' life. "She's perfect," said her mother. "Absolutely," said her father. And she was. She was absolutely perfect. "Her name must be everything she is," said her mother. "Her name must be absolutely perfect," said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew. And when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written with ink on an envelope. And she loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat crayon. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect. And then she started school. On the first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile, and she ran all the way to school. Hooray, said Chrysanthemum, school! But when Mrs. Chud took roll call, everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. It's so long, said Joe. It scarcely fits on your name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. You're named after a flower. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chud that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chud. Now, put your head down. If I had a name like yours, I'd change it, said Victoria, as the students lined up to go home. I wish I could, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. Welcome home, said her mother and father. Welcome home. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag, and I'm named after a flower. Oh, pish, said her mother. Your name is beautiful and precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome, said her father. It's everything you are, said her mother. Absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria on the playground as Chrysanthemum entered. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, a chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things. Thank you for sharing with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Cloud. Chud, now put your head down. I just cannot believe your name, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. Neither can I, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. They said I even look like a flower. They pretended to pick me and smell me. Oh, pish, said her mother. They're just jealous. And envious, and begrudging, and discontented, and jaundiced, said her father. Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours, said her mother. After all, it's absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and another evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her, and she plucked the leaves and the petals one by one till there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at every flower. Chrysanthemum, 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 the flowers seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as everything else was about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in scales, and then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Joe was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy! Chrysanthemum's a daisy! Joe, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. "What's so humorous?" asked Mrs. Twinkle. "Chrysanthemum," was the answer. "Her name is so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on her name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "She's named after a flower." "My name is long," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It is," said Joe. "My name would scarcely fit on a name tag," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It would," said Rita, pointing. "And," said Mrs. Twinkle, "I'm named after a flower too." "You are?" said Victoria. "Yes," said Mrs. Twinkle. "My name is Delphinium. Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect." Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed. She beamed. She bloomed. "Chrysanthemum! Chrysanthemum! Chrysanthemum!" Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. "Call me Marigold," said Joe. "I'm Carnation," said Rita, pointing. "My name is a Lily of the Valley," said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. And here's our little epilogue. Overall, the class musical was a huge success. Chrysanthemum was absolutely perfect as a daisy. Victoria made the only mistake. She completely forgot her lines as the dainty fairy queen. And Chrysanthemum thought it was wildly funny, and she giggled throughout the entire dance of the flowers. Eventually, Mrs. Twinkle gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and of course, she named her Chrysanthemum. The end. Did you like that one? Yes, that's so funny.
Yeah,
You know,
Miss Kathy, I personally really love that story.
I liked it.
oh, you liked it? Oh, I'm so glad you guys like it. And that's a long, long name, isn't it? Chrysanthemum. And I don't even think I could spell it. I got to practice that one. Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum. Oh, glorious.
Baby.
Okay, I've got one more story for you. And it's about another boy. His name is Alexander. All right. Here we go, Alexander. And he was not having a very
This one looks like a naughty one. I love this book.
You
I
love
love
the book? Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
Sanders.
Okay, are y'all ready? Here we go. Whoops. Let me get to page 1. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by my mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water is running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have the seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said, if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be carsick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. And at singing time, she said I sang too loud. Oh, at counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. Oh, he said that Philip Parker was his best friend and that Albert Mayo was his next best friend and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. There were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, Mom took us all to the dentist, and Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. Come back next Wednesday, and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, I'm going to Australia. On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot. And while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. While I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and for fighting. I'm having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. No one even answered. So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes. But the shoe man said, we're all sold out. They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. When we picked up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with his copy machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk, and I was careful as could be except for my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad said, please don't pick him up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner. I hate lima beans. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes, and my marble went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out. Oh, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony and not with me. It's been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days are like that, even in Australia. The end.
That made no sense.
Wait a minute.
What?
Oh,
What do you mean it
no.
makes no sense? He had a terrible. Oh, he wanted to move to Australia because
Did you put that background on there?
he thought Australia there
Yes,
wasn't any problem.
No, it's scary.
Xander, who used to be rich.
Ian, Ian, let me put that background off.
Which background do you have? Let's see. How did you get that one? Where did you get that background?
I don't know. My dad has one on his computer, but we don't have one. We're gonna get one now.
Are you talking about us?
Yeah.
That
How'd you
was a
get that one,
screenshot from a
Samantha?
Star Wars. That was a screenshot from a Star Wars TV show, and then you can put photos as a virtual background, and I did that.
Oh.
And then I thought
should do that. That would be good.
Hey.
Oh. Hey, Lukey. So have you guys been working on your poem for Thursday's poetry tea?
No.
Yeah.
He is working on our poem.
You are? Okay, good. We want you to.
Well, I think I memorized mine.
Oh, wow. That's so great. Memorize your poem and we'll have our poetry tea on Thursday. That's going to be so.
Oh no, I am white dear.
You could even just you could even just read a poem, or if you don't want to do it, you can just listen to everybody else say their poem and say, good job, good job.
But no, I may memorize mine.
You memorized one? I can't wait.
Well, it's the color yet. So,
Be a surprise. Save it for Thursday.
I
That's
just
good.
texted. I said, ha ha ha. To Lizette Windsor.
Ha ha ha. Well, we had 3 books, so what's your favorite?
Miss Kathy.
Alexander?
Miss Kathy.
Yes.
You know what I did?
What?
I made. Wait, sorry, I need to do something.
What did you make? Say it again. It didn't come through.
How do you? Oh, sorry. Mine was the last. Us now. Okay, one sec. I like the second one. I like the fourth. Yeah. I like that one the best. I like the third one.
That's a good one. You guys should all practice spelling chrysanthemum.
Okay. That one's my favorite.
No,
My
Phineas.
favorite.
I made. Mine was the last one. I made an ugly sweater for Tuesday.
Wow, look at that. That's so fun.
I made it. I made it from. I used rose.
You did?
My mom cuts up shorts and makes them into she makes them into froze.
I love it. What a great idea.
She pants and makes them into shorts. Pretend when I look at
Wow.
Wait.
Oh. Wow. Hold it up to the camera so we can see it better, Mia.
Yeah, I want to introduce my goal. Check it out. Wait. Roll.
My toe.
How are you doing, Jay?
my toe that hurts.
We have baby chicks.
Baby chicks? Really? Did you buy them or did you hatch them?
My grandma picked them for us.
So are you going to raise chickens?
I said sorry, Jay.
Oh my goodness, that's going to be so exciting. How big are they?
They're like that. Like they're like tiny.
Like this or
They're
like
big.
this?
Wait, did I send it? Big.
You hold them?
No, I doubt it.
Okay. How fun.
Oh no!
I have never had chickens before. We used to have ducks, but we've never had.
Wait, Arya, you're getting chickens?
We have them.
I am so excited about that.
We
Wow.
like them. We have
You're
them
going to have to
too.
take a picture and send it to us.
Yeah.
They could be dumb, but they're awesome.
Are they bigger? Any bigger?
Wow.
Like this big. We got 6.
That big? Wow, that's pretty big.
Yep.
What do you feed them?
They're like this big. Yeah, Jason.
Hey, Jace, did you see him?
We went over there yesterday.
Oh, that's fun. You got to see
Got
them
him
yesterday.
yesterday.
Did you hold them?
Want to go somewhere else?
You got to hold them? Oh, that's so
Mine's
nice.
named Cutie. Yeah, Cutie. Fatty. Cutie, Cinnamon, Fatty. Crown. Fatty. Bob.
You didn't name them Chrysanthemum?
Bob. Papa Junior.
Or Fluffy? Or what else could you name a chicken?
What? Soft. Because they're soft.
Oh, wow.
Let's
Soft.
do this. Two people with my ears.
That's so great. Oh, you guys are so precious. All right. Well, if you want to listen to the chapter book, I'll be reading it tomorrow.
Okay.
Time.
Thank
All right, thanks for tuning in. See you later.
Thank you, Miss Kathy.
Oh, you bet. Bye.
Bye.